Welcome to our IPL Team Maps, where I hate on your favorite side using algorithms I've created because of just how much I don't like you and whichever particular colored pajamas you enjoy. We've actually tried to make these a little bit more easy to understand this time. So at the top, we have the total. That is just looking at all the numbers from the 2023 series to see how your team actually went. On the right is how you go when you bat, and on the left is how you go when you bowl. But one big change from last time is we've actually made it now that if your mark is shrunken in, that means you're not very good at that thing. And if your mark is pushed all the way out, it means you're very good at that thing. Like CSK is yellow, very good at power play batting last season.
If you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months, plus gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a blocker protects the stumps with NordVPN today.
These are not averages, these are not economies. This is a combination of both, looking at each period of the game and then working out what is more important. With power play bowling, we look at averages a lot more. With death batting, we look more at the strike rates in those periods. But every number that you see on the screen is just a ratio that we have come up with using those algorithms. But let us start with the show. So I think CSK is as good as anywhere to start because alphabetically and also, they're quite a handy side. So we can get rid of all these other teams here and just focus on them. And as I've already said, pretty good at batting in the power play, right? But you can see that there isn't a single part of their game where they're terrible. The one I question the most is the middle batting phase, and I don't know if that's just because they hold their wickets a little bit more or what the situation is, but they really shouldn't be that good in the power play and then struggling this much in the middle. But looking at what they did in the auction, they got Ratchet Ravinja and they've got Jarrod Mitchell. Those are 2 players that they could use in that position. Of course, who knows, one of them might end up having to open now that Devon Conway won't be around for a while. But it looks like to me that they at least were aware of this problem and tried to see what they could do with it. But really, if we're being honest here, there's no notes. There's not a lot that they really needed to fix. So giving themselves an all-rounder who is pretty handy in the field and Jarrod Mitchell, that's a really good start. On the bowling, there's nothing absolutely fantastic on this side, but they have given themselves Shardul Thakur and perhaps Ratchet Ravinja's overs and perhaps Jarrod Mitchell's overs, I suppose. But that's to give them more options, and that's what they really like. We know that Shardul is not a great IPL player, but he does give you options and versatility, and that's what CSK use. But now we'll move on to Delhi. Slightly different kind of season here, and as you can see, a very, very different kind of shape. This is where their batting should be. On this line on the outside, you can see just how far in they are. They are 23% worse in some periods of batting than other teams. I mean, this is quite horrible because at least if they were pushed out massively on this side, you could say, well, they're a bowling team. I mean, they're a bowling team compared to being a batting team, but that's about it. So what did they do to fix all this batting? They picked up Harry Brook, who was their big signing, and of course they got Tristan Stubbs, and they got Shai Hope. Harry Brook is now no longer playing in this, and I can tell you one thing, Shai Hope and Tristan Stubbs are not fixing any of this. They're bargain basement buys anyway. But even if Brook came over, I would say considering just how bad this section is, they really didn't try to fix it all that much. So that means they're hoping that Rishabh Pant will come back and he will make runs and there will be some improvements from some of the players in their squad. They might be right. It's a lot of improvement that will be needed, and Rishabh Pant will have to be firing from ball 1. You can see with the bowling, overall, they're okay, I suppose, and they're not too bad throughout the first part of the game. It's their death bowling where they struggle a little bit. They've got Jai Richardson, who they're going to be adding to this, and I love him, but he's never really done anything in the IPL, and of course, his biggest issue is generally fitness. If he is fit, he is a fantastic bowler. It does not happen very often, sadly. Let's go on to Gujarat and this is a much more healthy looking shape. In fact, let me just prove to you how much different these 2 teams are. It almost completely overlaps Delhi the way they are. The only thing that is similar is power play bowling, and every other way Gujarat is the better side. But we still need to have a look at them and see what they have done here. Clearly the shape tells you that there's no real weaknesses. Everything is pretty much a strength, or at least par. I think if you look at the opening batting, Shubman Gill still needs a partner that is going to be a lot better there. But they didn't really pick up anyone obvious who's going to fix that for them. The only other thing that I was interested in here was the power play bowling. They've picked up Spencer Johnson, and they have probably overpaid for a new player, but he is very hyped at the moment, and he's top player. So perhaps this could do something for them. Next team worth looking at is KKR. And just to do a similar thing to what we did before, you can see just how much they are struggling in every single facet of the game. But let's get rid of the better team here and have a look at them just compared to average. Okay, they're still struggling, but you get my point. It starts with batting. Overall, they just don't have any, and it really is so obvious with opening batting. They're 27% worse for opening batting than the average team in the IPL from 2023. That is absolutely pathetic. So obviously they went and they paid a whole bunch of money for an opening. No, they didn't really do that. It just means that they have Rana, Gurbaz, and Roy is... Oh, wait, Roy's not there. I don't really know what they're going to do with their batting, their opening batting. It doesn't look good on paper, though, let's be honest. It didn't look good last year. It looks worse right now. They're slightly under par at the death as well. That could be that they were losing too many wickets at the top, of course, but they did do quite well in the middle. We get to the bowling, slightly under par again with bowling, and it really does start with the power play when they get behind in the game. And this one they have got someone for. Mitch Starc is supposed to come in, but they also have a little bit of backup with Mujib if they need an opening spinner. And if you come around here, you'll see that at the death, they're not particularly good either. And again, Mitch Starc might be able to help them with that. So that makes a lot more sense. The only problem I would have is that they're paying Mitch Starc for what he used to be rather than what he is right now. 24 crore is just probably too expensive, having seen how he's been bowling with the white ball over the last few years. But maybe there wasn't a great choice, and so they've just gone with that. But as we said before, their biggest issue is that they need to improve in everything, and that's hard to do anyway. All right, so let's have a look at Lucknow here. And again, if we just to combine these two teams and have a look, you can see that Lucknow wasn't fantastic, but there's a couple of bits that they are very good at. It's certainly, you know, in comparison to a team like Kolkata, but also in comparison to the average. But there are a few things that they're not as good at as well. They certainly need to fix their batting all the way through. You can see their overall mark is quite low, but power play batting into the middle, they managed to pull it back quite well towards the end. So they did well there. They've got Devdutt Padikkal, so that will boost them a little bit. They've also got Ashton Turner, but I don't see him playing all that much. So Devdutt Padikkal can't sort all of this out. They really have to just make more runs from their top order all the way through to their middle order. Otherwise, they're going to be in trouble. But if we come through here, you see they're a good bowling side, except for the power play bowling. So they picked up Shivan Mave, who I'm a big fan of in general. So I don't have a problem with that. They also picked up David Willey, but I think he's now been injured, so he may not be available. And I apologize if I got any of the injuries wrong. The amount of injuries that have been coming through at the start of this tournament have been so full on, and there aren't a lot of websites who accurately update the list of all these players. But I can see in getting Shivan Mave and in getting David Willey, they gave themselves a good chance to fix this. But they're really good in the middle, and obviously an excellent death bowling lineup as well. So we've added something new this time as well. We've got extra ratings, and these ones are actually for pace and spin. How they bowled it, how often they bowled it, and how they faced it. So if you have a look at this graphic, you'll see at the top is the pace spin ratio. Very easy to understand. The higher your line is, the more pace you bowled compared to other teams. And obviously, if you're inside the graphic, that means you bowled a lot more spin. And then on the right-hand side, we've got the pace. And then on the left-hand side, we've got the spin. Again, exactly the same. The further out, the better you're at it. The further in, the worse. So as you would expect, a CSK bowl a lot of spin. In fact, they bowl 17% less seam than other sides. And they also bowl it very well. And they bat pretty much okay, about par against it. So they're pretty good against spin, and you would expect that because that's kind of how they've set up their entire side. However, it is worth noticing that they're pretty good when they bowl pace, and they face pace very well. So realistically, the biggest weakness, and they're par, so I wouldn't call this a weakness, but their biggest weakness is actually batting against spin. I wonder if Daryl Mitchell or Rachin Ravindra can help them with that. You can see here from the top that Delhi bowl almost the exact same amount of league average when it comes to pace versus spin. But what about how they actually go when they are using it? You could see that they're above average bowling team when it comes to pace. The interesting part though then is they are absolutely horrendous when they're batting against pace. They are 22% worse than league average. The good news is exactly the same thing happens when they're batting against spin. There's almost no change here at all, but you can see that their spinners are holding their own. At least they're around par. Honestly, it doesn't matter how I show any of the different daily graphics when it comes down to it. they're just not going to look very good. Gujarat look incredible on my numbers no matter how you split it up. But let's have a look at this. They use more pace than other teams, and you can see that it works for them. Their pace bowlers are doing really, really well. And while they're not smashing the pace when they're facing it themselves, they're certainly doing well enough to justify giving wickets for their seamers. Batting against spin, though, they are absolutely fantastic, and they're maybe not quite as good as bowling it themselves. What this tells you is they're using extra seam, and it's completely working for them. But if they wanted to as well, they're either using their spin perfectly or they could use more spin. That's a lot of really good options for a team to be in. Hello, this is the first shape that is just completely odd on this graphic. And let me just split it up so you get a better look at it here. But it really starts with the fact that KKR do not bowl any pace. They just completely gave up on seam bowling last year. And you can see why. They are, 15% worse at bowling pace than league average. And the good news is that they also were slightly under par when they were batting against pace as well. What about spin? They also didn't bat particularly well against spin, as we saw in the previous graphic. They're not particularly good at batting, but they did go all in on their spin bowling. But this isn't a great amount. They're 6% better than the league. And when you consider how much spin bowling they're using, it's not as good a bump as you would hope for. However, I will say this. That's probably partially because they're overusing their spin bowlers, right? If they had one other good seamer that they could use a bit more and they could bump up these, they could probably use a little bit less spin and these numbers would probably pop further. And I think the real issue when looking at this team is there's no point them making spin-friendly bowling tracks because when they bat against it, it doesn't work very well for them. And this is LSG. You can see, again, another kind of more similar map that we saw for Kolkata from before. They use 22% less seam than the other sides. But they actually bowl it really well. So it suggests that their usage is fine. And if we just come over to spin, they're good at bowling on both sides. They really are a stronger bowling side. So it makes sense. And this gives them variability, I suppose, in future if they do want to bowl a little bit more seam. Their problem is, of course, completely down here. Batting against pace, I mean, that's really bad. That's terrible. They're 13% worse than average. Their batting against spin, it's still bad, but not as catastrophic, but there's some clear issues here, right? So I think they have flexibility when it comes to the bowling, and with the batting, I don't know what they have. And that is part one for our team map preview. I put a lot of effort into these and I also think they're really pretty. So please like and subscribe. And remember, of course, more importantly, that part two will be coming very, very soon as well. We will have all the teams covered. We'll be looking at how they play against pace and against spin and all those sorts of things, what zone they're very good at. Plus, you know, there's more prettiness like this. Look at this. It's pretty. Who doesn't want to come back for that? So like, subscribe, leave a comment. If I've mentioned any players who were injured, that is not my fault because everyone is injured. So I apologize ahead of time for that. But come back and we'll have the rest of these tomorrow.